Hello, welcome once again. It's a beautiful Sunday morning. We are here with RPM, the Red Peace Machine. And yeah, how are you doing, Susie?
I'm doing okay. I had an eventful yesterday. Yesterday was no day before Jesus. It was so eventful. I feel like I'm still going through it. My mom's Labradoodle puppy came over to stay with me, and I took him outside to pee, and I let him off the leash to run. And then he came. Then we came upstairs, and he started doing this, and he was walking like he was drunk, and I got totally freaked out, and I rushed him to his vet, and he had heat stress. He was
Oh,
having a little seizure. Yeah.
oh,
So apparently be very careful. It wasn't even 90 degrees. I didn't let him run because I videoed him running. It was less than a minute. And we went back upstairs. So the vet said that when they took him outside, they cooled him down. His temperature was 104, which is very high. It should be 102. And it was 104. They cooled him down. They took him outside to go to the bathroom, and it went right back up. So it's definitely the heat. So that was crazy for me. I'm just glad he's okay. So I'm feeling relieved and still a little.
yeah.
How about you, Benesha? How are you?
I am good. Yeah, I'm on a very I've I've never been a scheduled type of person, but recently I've noticed that I'm understanding the blessings of having a schedule and sticking to it. Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Dr. Casagrande, how are we doing?
Same.
Excellent. Excellent.
Just same.
As all of us, same.
Same.
What about you, Ramesh?
Doing good, yeah, making it.
That says a lot right now. It really does.
I think the elephant in the room is we're back in COVID. We're back in stage 5. That's a lot of anxiety. Lots of anxiety. I
don't see anyone wearing masks.
No.
Are you seeing people wear masks? I got nobody in my building wearing masks.
Yeah, I've been
I'm
seeing
seeing
people
masking again.
A
Yeah.
handful, right? Like, so 15-25% of folks are still wearing masks, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of my anxiety is coming from the fact that we're back in, but there is no sense of urgency. I mean,
For me,
Yeah,
it's
we're
the
back up.
kids, right? Schools are reopening. We cannot have masks in schools. We're not even keeping kids out of schools if they're positive for COVID. And if there's any injury to my younger brother of any kind, if he requires a hospital bed for any reason, he has to be airlifted out of the city. There's no space.
So for the record, the blue counties in Texas have gone into rebellion, and masks are going to be required in the schools. County commissioners, county judges have actually said that it is going to be a requirement that every single public institution in that county, including community colleges and universities, will have to wear masks. This is obviously going to be in the courts because those blue counties have sued the governor. About a week ago, I asked a friend of mine, because we were always talking about these policy things. I said, do you think the governor is going to sue the blue counties that are going into rebellion? And he's like, no, why would he do that? What if he loses? And he made a great point, right? Because he's done what he needs to win the primaries, which is, stick it to the people who believe in science, because those are obviously evil people. And if he loses in the court, that doesn't get him anything. If he wins in the court, it doesn't get him anything. So, but then the Blues County sued him instead. So instead of him suing the blue counties went after him. So this will definitely go through the courts.
Is Austin on that blue county list?
Yeah, Travis County is one of the counties that said it is requirement that they did it on the 11th. So 4 days ago, that all public schools, and they said specifically, including community colleges and universities. So it forces UT to wear a mask, that forces ACC to wear a mask.
But anyone who's private, they can do whatever they want, including, say, don't wear a mask. Is that
Sure.
right? Like a private school could say, we refuse to have you on campus if you're going to wear a mask.
Yeah, but I think the real question now is, if you're a public institution and you get state funding, do you want to, who do you want to defy? Do you want to defy the county, or do you want to defy the Texas legislature and the governor? Because you know the Texas legislature is going to side with the governor. Of course, the Democrats in Texas appear to be making it impossible for them to do any 30-day special sessions. So it may just be that nothing can be done until spring of 2023, which is in my mind hilarious because, right, the fact that Texas has effectively no government except for 140 days every spring of an odd numbered year. Like, it's just the most preposterous thing ever.
Well, we often stretch it into a special session, so we add at least another 100
Right.
days or so. Right?
But now the Democrats have made it impossible for them to do the special session. And so, you know.
Yeah. So what happens here if they, I mean, have the Democrats come back to Texas?
No, because they started a second 30-day special session, so the
Right.
Democrats have to stay away for that too.
So, but they went ahead and for some reason, I feel like I read that they passed something here. Of course, I don't know how they passed it without having anyone there
Yeah.
to vote.
They ended up with, I think, 88 yeses, something like that. And or maybe there was 88 people there in the Texas legislature. To have a quorum, you must have 2/3 majority present in the building. They don't have to be in the Senate chamber or the House chamber. They can be in the bathroom, they can be in the broom closet. They just need to be in the building. And they do not have that in the House, and yet somehow they passed a bill making it so that if there is a Democrat in somewhere within the jurisdiction of a Texas law enforcement agency, that Texas law enforcement agency is supposed to arrest that Democrat. But I don't think it's binding because there was no quorum. So I don't think it was a real law.
That's
So
what
that
I
doesn't
thought
get
too.
matter.
It was interesting that it was news. It kind of made me go, wait a minute, why are they yeah, of course they're going to have their own little voting party. I mean,
And anyway, the governor can just order the arrest. So it's not like they need to pass anything to make that happen. So the
Right.
governor could just tell the Texas state troopers, find a Democrat and arrest them.
no matter where that, even if they could go to Georgetown, they could go to DC and arrest them.
No, because it's out of their jurisdiction. If they showed up
Okay.
in DC, that would be a
What
crime.
about is there any way that they could I don't know that they would, but shit, man, Ken Paxton is all over this now. Could they send out some sort of extradition, go get these people and bring them back? Is that
I mean,
bounty hunter? I don't know.
you could totally ask. I think the problem would be then whatever place they're in would have to ask the question, is this something they can be arrested for? And then if it is, do they have to send them? And I think, as long as they stay out of red states, they should be fine, because this is preposterous.
Don't you think all of the Trumpers would fit in Florida? I mean, if we could just relegate them all to Florida, I would be happy.
It's such a huge portion of U.S. population. Isn't it like 43%?
I'm just
I don't
like,
think they're going to fit in Florida. I think what will happen at that point is the coral reef that Florida used to be will just collapse under the weight.
Well, what a shame.
And then it'll fall in the ocean even faster.
This is all part of Susan's plan.
I don't see the problem here.
I honestly don't either. I was thinking a way we could defeat Cuba was to give Florida to Cuba.
Oh God.
That would just
If we could somehow saw off that fucking flaccid penis.
I mean, global warming is going to eliminate our dong. We're going to become a dongless country.
Yes, it's true. Yeah. It's true.
So what are we talking about today?
Yeah. Afghanistan, I thought we were going to mention for a second, and just because of what happened, and then because, well, what's happening, it's not happened yet, but it's pretty close to being finished, wouldn't you say? I mean, they're making overtures, and one of the guys even said, one of the Taliban, I wish I could remember his name because he's clearly important, said there will be no revenge, which I found interesting.
Yes.
Go
So
ahead.
what the government in Afghanistan has announced is that it is creating a transitional government. They are now meeting with the Taliban, who have entered the outskirts of Kabul, and they are negotiating out the surrender of the government. And so the government has collapsed way faster, I think, than anybody could have imagined. I thought at least, I think in a previous show I said I would be shocked if they get to January 1st, but I thought they'd at least get to September 1st.
You said that last show, I think, and we were all like, yeah, probably. Oh my God.
So what was this? Was this as, I mean, right, maybe the duration was unexpected, but the collapse was not unexpected, right?
Not at all. I mean,
so why wasn't this negotiating of a new government, all this stuff, why wasn't this taking place last year, 2 years while we were there?
I mean, it was. So we were negotiating with the Taliban. We've been negotiating with the Taliban secretly since the Obama administration, and then Trump made it open. And most of the negotiating was done in Qatar. And most of the negotiating was on what it would look like after the Taliban took over. So we were clear from the beginning that with our negotiations with them, which has been going on for like 10 years, that the government was going to collapse and be replaced by the Taliban. I don't think anybody who understood anything about the area knew or could imagine any other outcome. There was no other outcome. I think the difference is that the Taliban realized they didn't need an agreement with us. In other words, whatever we came up with in the negotiating that took place in Doha, at the end of the day, kind of doesn't matter because we're just out. What are we going to do to them?
Exactly, right? Yeah.
Susie, did you read that they're not going to take revenge against the Afghan helpers to the US? Is that what revenge was about?
I don't. I just checked Twitter right before we got on, and it said that one of the leaders of the Taliban during negotiations said there will be no revenge taken. I don't know to whom that was appointed. Don't know.
Got it.
I mean, hold on.
The Taliban earlier issued a statement saying they had no plans to take the city by force. Yeah, they're working on a peaceful takeover and no intention of taking revenge against those serving in the Afghan government or military.
This is just incentive for folks to desert, and
So what do you think? Do you trust that?
I mean,
do you trust anything the Taliban says or does? Or
I
mean, is there a reason to trust them?
In the other spaces that they have taken over, have they harmed deserters of the Afghan army, of the Afghan state police, of these forces?
Well, I mean, I think one of the things that happens when the police and the army desert is they just go join the Taliban.
Yeah.
So I don't know that there's much precedent for vengeance there.
Will they convert them? Convert? Would they ask them to come over and be on their side? I
mean, I think that's what a large portion of the people who are defecting are doing. Other people just probably take off their uniforms and
go back home.
And then, Afghanistan has always had a tradition of having warlords, and so some of them are just going to hang out with their warlords or their tribes.
Yeah.
What about the interpreters?
The interpreters need to leave the country.
Yeah.
And the fact that the United States has brought over almost just a tiny fraction of them makes it so that anybody in the future who works with the United States during the invasion is an idiot.
Yeah, the Kurds can tell you that.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, they get, how many times can you be betrayed before you go, wait a minute.
So Ashraf Ghani he was the Afghan president, has also left the country for Tajikistan, is what they're saying now, 40 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Interior Ministry official.
So, what does this mean long term? Are we going to see another refugee crisis? Like humanly, this has a cost, right? This isn't just stuff playing out on a battlefield. It is just a map that we look at. There's human beings behind these stories that we're seeing and reading. What is the human cost of this?
I would like to seriously talk about that, and not in terms, because we always talk about the refugee crisis, or we talk about um, we do talk about the women, but we only talk about what happens to the women in within the confines of a specific narrative. And
Wait, tell us that narrative. How do we talk about women and
the way that,
yeah.
I just spent a little bit of time going online this morning and reading foreign policy, New York Times, Washington Post articles. So just talking about the US media and how the topic of women in Afghanistan is covered. And it's always the difference between pre-Soviet Union takeover in 1979. There were miniskirts. In fact, apparently, a picture of women in miniskirts was shown to Trump at some point to convince him that we need to remain in Afghanistan because Trump was saying there's no hope. There's no hope. What are we like? Why are we there? It's always been a shithole, and it will remain to be a shithole. And apparently, one of the generals showed him this picture of early 1970s women in miniskirts, and that picture apparently changed his mind.
Well,
Changed his mind.
It's hysterically sad, is what that is. That is how. I mean, he immediately thought, more women to look at. I mean, what went through his mind? It had nothing to do with the country.
Well, yeah, I don't even want to be in his mind, except for the fact that some of that narrative that he's got going in his head is the dominant narrative in the US, in the sense that, and I'm not saying that in fact, I would like to talk about how there is a conversation to be had there, but a much deeper one. So yes, women in miniskirts says something, and women in burqas says something else. It says something very important and very deep, except that we never go beyond that in our media. We just says, our understanding of it is, well, I mean, look at this. Obviously, we want them in miniskirts. And it's a matter of, and of course, it's a matter of choice, giving women the choice to wear one over the other, and women don't have a choice. And all of that is right on. It makes perfect sense. It's fabulous. In the eyes of sort of using a post-colonial lens, some folks can come and say, okay, the imperial power, your understanding of this is, if the women are aping us, if they're trying to look like us, if they're aspiring to be more like us, that's desirable, as opposed to anything else. It doesn't have to be burqas, right? Burqas obviously also have extra connotations. So that's where the conversation in our media ends. And we probably don't have time to go into all the details, but that is a starting point for a whole conversation, I think, into why Afghanistan is where it is. And it's a very deep conversation. It's a conversation that is being has been happening in academia. And I'm not just talking about pundits who read a book and think they can talk about Afghanistan. Right? These are people who are possibly from the region, or if they're not from the region, have traveled there, know the language, have lived there, been studying it for many, many, many years, have something to say, real. And the conversation is the conversation about Afghanistan is part of a bigger conversation, because Afghanistan is kind of the confluence of because of the Taliban, because of Al-Qaeda. It's sort of this node of trying to figure out what the hell has happened to the Arab Muslim Middle Eastern world. And that mini skirts in the 1970s is, right, there's an inflection point. All of a sudden in 1979, boom, we have this anti-Westernization sort of moment that is just, it's like a wave that's become a tsunami. It just keeps going. And what is that about? Like, I think there's a bigger conversation, there's a bigger movement, there's a deeper thing going on here. And again, in academia, people are talking about little pieces of it. And we even talked about this, right? The United States supporting Saudi Arabia and giving it the means by which to disseminate Salafi ideology was, of course, one of the reasons why, you know, we are seeing literalist interpretations of Islam, et cetera, et cetera. But I think there's other stuff going on, and everybody in academia and out there, again, people who know what they're talking about, not US media, or the, you know, the ones we can get readily available to us. I'm not talking about democracy now.
Like Al Jazeera and stuff like that. Do you trust Al Jazeera and some of what are some of the just, I'm sorry to interrupt, and I don't want to get back to it, but where would one watch this kind of stuff if we wanted to, if I as a white person did want to go and find out about this stuff, which I do, where would I go to look for good news that's in English?
I mean, I don't think, this is what I'm trying to say, I don't think we have a good, it's like a pieces of the puzzle and everybody's working on little pieces maybe, but we don't have a big picture of exactly what is happening. But one major piece is a piece that we don't see out there, and that is the role of patriarchy and the grip paternalism has across the globe, period. This is not just about, I mean, I am so in some ways happy and thankful that Trump happened to the US, because we are now able to see how easily even us in the West, the epitome of Western sort of, this is how we see ourselves, Western culture, how do I say this, sort of where feminism has taken the strongest roots, right? With the most thinkers and the most theory generation, all of that, the United States became and is still sort of teetering on going Margaret Atwood's way, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah. So, but we always talk about patriarchy, but then we don't. It could never possibly be an important reason that we need to discuss. It couldn't possibly, we can't give it the attention that we need.
That's not what men really want. I mean, that's, you know, it gets into that whole, we can't pay. Who wrote it? It Can't Happen Here. I want to say Sinclair Lewis. There was one, and then what about 1984? I mean, we did, some of us, not me, of course, I was not alive at that time, but you know, some people did see that thing coming at us, you know. I mean, Philip Dick saw it, all of these people saw these things coming, but we just, like you said, it couldn't possibly happen to us. But it go ahead.
Yeah, so I guess the point I'm trying to make is Afghanistan is where it is today. Other parts in the Middle East are where they are today. I want to put this out there in big part because as humans, we are moving towards leaving patriarchy behind. We're still at the stage of let's have debate or not. We're still there, but we've come far. I mean, I just think of where we were in 1960 and where we were after the 1970s. And the fact that it's after the 1970s says something huge. It says something that 1970s, late 60s, 70s was the feminist moment.
It was.
Flawed as it was. It was a moment, right?
It was. And then the patriarchy said, that's enough.
Yeah. So
And that's Reagan.
So what I'm trying to say is we have got to bring paternalism and the desire to hold on to paternalism within the family unit, within workplaces, workplace cultures, within governance, all of this. We have to bring that in. We have to bring it as an important part of the conversation that we keep leaving out. Afghan men were missing it. Iranian men were missing it. American men are missing it. Men are missing the power. They're missing paternalism.
Yeah.
Why the fuck wouldn't they?
Yeah, exactly.
We are still living in a culture that is about domination. And then you take a God-given right of domination away, and it feels like it just slipped out of our hands. What the fuck just happened?
It's like the opening of I think it's the Declaration of Independence, where they say that our God-given right to be the leaders over nature. What are you fucking talking about? It's the very beginning of either the Declaration. I think it's the Declaration of Independence. When in the course of human events, two parties have to separate or whatever, and it, it's all so male. It's all so male. I mean, we were brought up believing God was male. Well, I mean, it says very clearly, if you read any of those books, Alpha and Omega. It doesn't say anything about I am, one man. All the people started calling him father.
Well, actually, so like, just to confuse things, in Judaism originally, there was Asheroth and Yahweh. There were two. There was a male and a female. And what happened was they wrote Asheroth out. They deleted the female.
Oh, Asherah.
So it was a deliberate event to make it so that there was just a male. So while we've been talking, the Taliban have actually entered Kabul, and the police have fled. Yeah. And so now the Taliban are now saying that they're going to prevent looting, and they're going to become the new police force. So it's done.
It's over.
It's over.
So
there's nothing
will
left.
this be an installment by them? Will they say this is your new leader?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have to, because there is no government. The president has fled the country. He fled the country, 55 minutes ago, 60 minutes ago.
And we're moving into full dictatorship. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, dictatorship, schmictatorship. I mean, the United States has single-member district representation with gerrymandering. Like we literally have vote rigging in our elections, and we're always pointing to somebody else going whatever.
So will they have the semblance of voting there?
Yeah, of course they'll do that. Okay. Yeah, everybody does that. I mean, like, that's just the way. It's like Texas.
It's a spectrum. It's a spectrum of autocracy.
The Soviet Union used to have elections. Texas has elections. They don't mean shit.
No.
It's
but they're fun.
Joke.
But we like to tell
it does mean more than it does in in Taliban Afghanistan. There is
at least with social programs. Yeah.
What happens? What happens when a government comes in that is not going to be acknowledged by the United States, right?
Oh no! What are we going to do? We've never acknowledged Cuba.
Yeah.
North Korea, until Trump, had never been acknowledged.
Yeah,
it's just stupid.
Yeah, the Islamic Republic of Iran was not acknowledged, and here we are.
I mean, it just whatever. I think what's going to be interesting is because the government basically is collapsed in such an unviolent way. It's not that there hasn't been any violence over the last few weeks. It's just, relatively speaking, like in terms of deaths, this has been a pretty soft collapse of a state, the Taliban can actually just take the state apparatus
Yeah.
and put their people at the top and just keep it functioning. So there might actually be like no transition in the sense that there won't be any loss of electricity or any loss of water or any loss of policing. And because the Taliban have ruled Afghanistan before, they know what to do. So it'll probably be a relatively smooth transition. I think really the question falls on what happens to the women. I really think
So
that's
here's
the
the thing,
only question.
and it isn't just what happens to the women, but how we're gonna present the narrative. And the narrative is going to be like this: oh my goodness, they're going to go, which is terrible, which is beyond horrific. They're going to be housebound again. They can't leave, they can't go to school, violence against them, all the things, which is horrific. Instead of, this is yet another example of patriarchy and extreme paternalism. And inside Afghanistan, it's probably going to be, sorry, let's back out of Afghanistan. I'm sorry. This is all about Islam. Again, in US media, it's all about Islam. It's about certain interpretations of Islam, which is all true, all great. But there's a little, like a river running underneath it. And the river running underneath it runs all the way around the globe. And it's called patriarchy. And if there's an interpretation of the Quran in a particular way, it's because of patriarchy. And if it's that you're reporting the news in a particular way and putting a particular bend on Afghanistan and the women, it's again because of patriarchy.
So how would you fix that? Would that be, I mean, if you, and I don't mean replacing the patriarchy, obviously, I mean, how the news is getting to us. How do we reframe that narrative so that the truth is coming to us?
Well,
I mean,
we just
Listen to
reframe it.
RPM,
We
tune
just
in, and
reframe
we
it.
will give you.
That's right. But how do we get others to, I mean, how do we teach? What would I say to a friend of mine who called and asked what we were talking about and asked me that question? Well, how am I supposed to talk about this then? I don't know what's going on over there.
Yeah,
right?
I love it because I love that you're asking this question. A lot of the times talking about women and Afghanistan under burqas for people from the region is difficult. It feels like airing dirty laundry. Talking about literal and political interpretation, let's just say literal and conservative interpretations of the Quran to folks who are not from the region feels like airing dirty laundry. Wow. If we talk about this in terms of patriarchy, which is the real reason, and it's global, we can comfortably go and talk about we can talk about the superstructure stuff. Oh yes, yeah, well, this is what's happening to the women, and yes, this is the interpretation that's being used. But the underground river runs all across the globe. No, and so it shouldn't feel like dirty. It shouldn't feel like dirty laundry,
right?
Because my God, we just experienced this with Trump. We have television shows that are showing us what's going to happen.
This is precisely why talking about it with that framework is going to be the most difficult thing, right? We don't want that uncomfortable truth.
We don't.
Of it being right
because
here.
there is such a distance between the Taliban and Mitch McConnell. And never the twine shall even look at each other. Forget meeting.
Well, hopefully old Mitch will be out of here soon. But yes, I mean, he's just representative of most of them.
It's also worth pointing out that the Muslim Brotherhood did not exist until the British occupation of Egypt. It's worth pointing out that Hamas didn't exist until until a group of Europeans were allowed to steal Palestine from the Palestinians. It's also worth pointing out that the Taliban didn't exist until the dumbass Soviets invaded Afghanistan. It's also worth pointing out that ISIL didn't fucking exist until the United States blew the hell out of Iraq. So, one of the solutions would be stop fucking murdering people and stop fucking occupying other countries. And maybe you won't get these crazy far right-wing reactionary events. And then we'll just have Hitler and Trump, and we can just have the far right be in Europe and the United States and not have to constantly export it to the rest of the world.
We literally printed the textbooks, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
Oh man.
the United States could break its alliance with Saudi Arabia. It's not officially an ally, it's a friend, but nonetheless, it could stop supporting the Saudis, who are Salafists, and Salafists believe in blowing everything up and erasing the past and starting from zero. If Salafists had their way, they'd blow up the pyramids in Egypt. The Salafists blow up Muslim shrines. They blew up, why? Nobody can explain this to me, I think. They blew up the tomb of Suleiman, the Arab, not the Turk, the Arab Caliph, under the Umayyad Caliph in Syria. Why? What did he do that he needed his shrine blown up? They blew up a mosque in Mosul, the famous one with the hanging, the leaning minaret. And this kind of madness has come from trying to drive the United States, trying to drive Russia, trying to drive Britain out of the country. When you attack a country, it makes people crazy. Who would have guessed that violence begets violence?
Yeah, it turns people into reactionaries.
Never heard that.
Oh, all right.
Wow.
I don't think we have time to continue to our COVID updates. And I don't think this will be our last episode on these themes or topics. So stay tuned.
No.
Stay tuned.
This is what we do. This
Mhm.
is what we do. If you have any questions, by the way, please put them at the bottom of our YouTube show, and maybe we can get to some of those questions. I'm not going to read them because y'all are mean and call me names, but somebody.
Scruffy, don't be like this,
Scruffy. But I'm sure someone will go through them and find your questions.
I never read the comments.
They're going to the ether.
We start talking about patriarchy, you better, we're gonna have to put on some armor now.
Yeah, I'm
No.
ready. Let's go. Let's go, sister. I am right
Maybe
there
not,
behind you.
maybe not. I have hope. I always have hope. I'm
I
silly.
have hope too.
Mhm.
Well, I'm pretty
But the Bible
pessimistic again.
says I should dominate you.
Yeah.
That is true.
Natural
Well,
law. It's natural law. It's the natural order.
It's worth pointing out too, there's one more thing that we kind of always skirt over. The Abrahamic religions, Judaism has never been a dominant world religion, right? Like it's just such a tiny portion of the population. But Christianity and Islam are the two largest religions on the planet. And they are obviously very dominant. Islam is the fastest growing, but it'll be decades before it passes Christianity. Those two religions were born in the middle of a catastrophe. The only reason that they are the dominant world religions is because of malaria. Malaria crippled, destroyed, massively reduced the population of the Middle East and the Mediterranean. And what happened then was people mass converted to Christianity initially, and then there's a mass conversion afterwards to Islam, because both religions offer a great way to make sense of your incredibly short life. If you have a 25-year life expectancy, all you got to do is follow these, just don't sin, and you're good to go on the other side. And
right.
or die in a way that your imaginary friend really likes. And the result is that whenever there's a crisis now, this fanaticism that we see, Hitler and the Nazis responding to the Depression, or Trump responding to the shrinking white population in the United States, or the Taliban trying to drive the Soviets out, now trying to drive the United States out, that this is endemic in those religions. So one of the problems is at some point, we're going to have to face the music and actually look at what those Abrahamic religions do to our brains. And I don't think anybody wants to do that because we're so attached to them.
Well, I do want to say something that pre-Salafi Islam, the religion, the Islam that was practiced among the people. I mean, I know we're kind of, this is going to be a whole show that we have to do, maybe several shows, but the Islam that was practiced amongst the people was not a literal Islam. It was very localized. It was based around prayers and community taking care of each other. It was based on joy, music, art. It was based on poetry.
But there was still a patriarchy.
Mhm.
It was
Oh,
still
yeah. I mean,
functioning under
girl,
the well,
yeah.
yeah, no, I mean, I'm just asking how like
Yes.
we go from just like you were saying, it was such a shock,
Yeah.
right? Everything was, but
I-
then you
I-
also mentioned earlier in a text, and maybe I misunderstood this, but you were talking about how the blonde and seeing the legs and how, you know, like you aping so much. Do you consider 1975 was that a good time there, or was that because of the freedoms, but although they were mimicking Western freedom, was it better than it is now?
I mean, this is a whole several series of shows,
Okay.
but I think so before the show started, we were having a text discussion. And one of the things I said was that in popular media, there's a juxtaposition between, again, I talked about it a little bit earlier too, between the burqa and the miniskirts in places like Afghanistan or Iran or Egypt. And I even read something earlier about beaches in Saudi Arabia, and how even though it was mostly flight attendants and Aramco people going to these beaches, the women, the citizens of Saudi Arabia, the women also had the right to go to those beaches. They might not have, etc. It's like, my point is, if we want to define feminism with wearing miniskirts, which is, I mean, this is what happened.
No, yeah, I know.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, even in the United States, having the right to wear what you want is more important than whether or not you can have an abortion. I'm serious about
No,
it.
I know. I mean,
so
in a
the
free
more
and fair
skin,
election.
and I have a question about that. Like, the more skin you show, who's going to actually benefit from that, as opposed to you having a right to abort your child? I'm not condoning abortions.
I am.
We can. I'm just saying that is
Yeah.
not the topic, though. Let's not, because
Right.
people are going to go down that rabbit hole.
No,
What
I
I'm
understand.
saying is, it's one thing in contradistinction to the other.
Yeah.
The point is, we zoom in on skin, showing skin
Mhm.
as a sign of being feminist. I say F that. I don't have trouble showing certain parts of my body. That's not the point. The point is something else. But in our minds, feminism is about how much of your body are you willing to show? Are you free that way?
I understand what you're saying. I do. And I think that is true in a lot of senses, but I also think that it's just ultimately a way of men controlling women's bodies. For example, women were only just allowed the freedom to wear pants in Congress.
No, totally. I'm totally with
What?
you. That is
Yeah.
but a small part of the damn thing.
Go
Is what
Nancy.
I'm saying.
Go Nancy.
But because it's good show, because it's good public, it looks
Yeah.
good. We keep talking
Yeah.
about our bodies.
Yeah. And who has control over them? And can we not? Yeah, I hear you.
Are you kidding me? My body is just, I want to be able,
Yeah.
lots of conversations about that. And
We'll have to do a
that's in
series.
fact what triggers the patriarchy in these other countries, which how should I say, like, it's really interesting. Muslim feminism, that's one of the things, that's one of the conversations that they keep having. It's like, okay, I wear hijab. I'm a feminist, but I wear hijab, but I focus on other things. Anyway, these are long conversations.
Yeah, no, it's true though. Yeah. I can't wait to talk about that later though, because
Hopeful notes as we
I
continue
have an
to
answer for you. Life in 1975 in Afghanistan was categorically better on every level than it is today.
Yes.
What the United States did for 20 years, what the Soviets did for, what were they there, 11 years, the civil wars, the 3 civil wars in between the Soviets leaving, the United States entering, that have just been a nightmare hell on earth. What we've done to that country is unconscionable. We killed 250,000 people. So we spent $1 trillion, killed 250,000 people, about 3,560, whatever the final number is. NATO soldiers are dead, all to get vengeance for 3,000 dead New Yorkers. And I want to ask, was it worth it?
Yeah.
I mean, why? Why did we do this? So we're literally saying 3,000 dead New Yorkers is worth 250,000 dead Afghans. And we've got nothing to show for it.
Yeah, and I love that you bring this up, Susie, because yes, this is one of the dirty laundry things we don't want to talk about. Absolutely. When the women were able to wear mini skirts, the standard of living was better in both Iran, in Afghanistan, in Egypt, all of that. But that isn't just because that it's a confluence, it's a bunch of stuff.
Sure.
It's neoliberalism, it's wars, it's very complicated. It's
yes, very incredibly. That's why we have this show.
And it's also worth remembering that not one of the 19 hijackers was from Afghanistan.
That's right.
Yeah, so the act of vengeance was just insane.
But of course, people will say
28,000 Pakistanis died in this time period too. So it wasn't just 250,000 Afghanis. It was also 28,000 Pakistanis.
Jesus.
It's funny, I'm thinking about the amount of text that has been written on Pashtun violence, exotifying, orientalizing Pashtun violence and cycles of violence and retribution, all of this. And the scales of,
Sorry about this, but as of 31 seconds ago, there is actually now fighting in Kabul.
Oh God, what happened to peaceful?
Well, I think it's inevitable there'll be some fighting. But I just don't even know how this is going to go. It's going to last for days. I don't think it's going to last for days.
Do you, I mean, we're actually actively putting people back, sending people back over there, right?
Well, yeah, but that was
to evacuate, to facilitate evacuation.
To evacuate.
Okay. The image you need to have is when we were leaving Saigon in Vietnam with the helicopters being pushed off the aircraft carriers. That's what we're doing, basically.
That's great.
Burn and run.
I'd like to see how the U.S. Comes to the aid of its helpers.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother can of worms that can be opened up. But yeah.
Yeah, we are so fucking magnanimous. I'm sure we'll do something.
All right, everyone. Stay tuned, stay hopeful, keep your narratives complicated. Do not stop at the miniskirt.
Thank you.
So many other cute outfits to wear.
I know! Like tights. Come on.
Yoga
What
pants.
happened to a good old-fashioned leotard?
Man, I just heard a man say that, like in a professional setting, that we should not wear tights because not all of us look good in tights. Of course, he meant the women. What man wears tights?
What man looks good in tights?
Yeah.
Hey.
I would like to see that.
I feel like I should wear tights as an act of camaraderie and support.
Oh yeah, you want to do support, wear control top pantyhose and a bra. And a bra. Well, actually, you know, I think if men had to wear their jock straps as often as women had to wear bras, that bras would no longer be a fucking thing.
Well, I gotta tell you, as a father of 2 boys, I really have made a mistake not wearing a jock strap for the last 11 years.
Oh.
And the conversation spirals.
No, I bet.
Or it gets elevated on that.
All right, y'all.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Goodbye.
Bye.